Hello everyone, Bubbling Moon back again, this time with my 300 subscriber special. I know it's kind of a weird number to be celebrating, but honestly it's more people than I ever thought would subscribe to my channel, so I felt like making it a milestone. And what better way to mark this occasion than going back and complaining about something I've already covered on this channel. The first time I covered World of Winx, I didn't really get to everything that I wanted to say about it, but I was feeling very frustrated with the show at that point, and I decided to just call the video early. I had no idea that it would blow up as big as it did. I never thought 20,000 people would watch my insane ramblings about this fictional show about fairies. But before I dive back into nitpicking the show apart, I just want to reiterate my point from the beginning of my last video on World of Winx. This video is just me expressing my discontent with a show that I feel does not live up to the Winx Club name. So if you don't want to hear somebody disparaging the show that you like, feel free to click off the video now with the knowledge that I do not think of you as any less of a person for liking this terrible, terrible show. But I will say, as much crap as I have to hand this show, I do like it a lot better than Pop Pixie. I would watch 1,000,000 episodes of World of Winx before I ever sat down to binge another season of Pop Pixie. So with all of the formalities out of the way, let's go ahead and start this off by talking about the biggest complaint that people had from my last video. It's in an alternate universe. And you know what? You're right. You are 100% correct that they wanted this show to exist in a different continuity than the regular Winx Club show. However, I will not apologize for this misunderstanding that I had because they cultivated this misunderstanding. I was purposely led to believe that these are the same characters that I know and love from the original series. There are several lines of dialogue that are meant to mislead people who have already been familiarized with the Winx Club canon into thinking that this is somehow related to the other shows that came before it. For example, one of Tekna's first lines of dialogue is, "We've been on Earth for months now." This line does a lot of heavy lifting with implications. "We've been on Earth for months now" suggests that they are from a completely different planet, perhaps in the magical universe. Now, they're never going to come out and directly say where the Winx are originally from, and a couple episodes into season 1, they're pretty much just going to act like the Winx have always been on Earth anyways. The next line is, "We're not supposed to use our magic in front of Earthlings." This suggests that there is some kind of higher authority that they are beholden to that is telling them that they cannot expose their magic to humans. And then we have the last line that convinced me that this was in the same continuity as the other shows. When Stella names the Dreamix power, Bloom slams on the brakes in the middle of traffic like, "Stella, how dare you do something without my approval? Me, Bloom, the star of the show." And Stella's like, "Well, Bloom, you came up with our club name." But when did she come up with this club name? Because what my mind immediately jumped to was season 1 of the main show when Bloom just comes up with the Winx Club name. And you know what? It's fine if they're not referencing that. It's fine if they're not talking about the magical universe. I would be fine with them being magical Martians from inside our solar system. But we never get told any of that. We never get their backstories explained at all. The most we really get about that is the flashback of Stella's bullying. And that seems like it takes place on Earth. If the show exists in a different continuity, you have to tell me who these characters are. You can't imply that I already know them if I don't in fact know anything about them. We know nothing about these new versions of the Winx Club. We don't know if Bloom is a long-lost princess. We know she definitely doesn't have the dragon flame. We don't know anything about these girls' pasts. We really just know who they are in the present and the superficial stuff they're showing us. I'm willing to accept almost anything in a fantasy animated children's show. But you have to tell me what's going on. You have to let me know what is happening, who these characters are, what the world we're currently in is. So, yes, every single person who was telling me that this exists in an alternate timeline, you are correct. But it is not my fault that this misunderstanding was forced upon me by the dialogue written into the show. Now, let's talk about this piece of trash. No, not Stella, though she is my favorite piece of blonde garbage. I'm talking about this monstrosity, this abomination, this symptom of a greater problem with this show. So, World of Winx was supposed to capture a older audience than the original Winx Club show. The only issue with that is this show feels so juvenile in the dialogue, in the way the story's presented, in the lack of build-up in the narrative. And that is highlighted perfectly with this thing, the Super Sue. And why do I hate this stupid hunk of magical plastic so much? Because even though it's on screen for such a small amount of time, every single time it gets featured, it feels like some kind of little kid's toy commercial. Like the show's taking a break to wave this thing in your face, just going, hey, don't you want to bug your parents to buy you this thing? And the thing that makes it worse is the fact that there are no Super Sue toys. This is essentially a commercial for something that doesn't exist. I might be making a mountain out of a molehill with this, but this just seems like a really juvenile, superficial, weird thing to shove in this show, especially if it's not actually advertising a product. It's featured so little in the show, it's like, why did you even put it in here at all? Speaking of pointless things, let's talk about this worthless talent show again. The structure of the WoW talent show makes absolutely no sense. A typical episode of this show is apparently filmed in this order. They wake the Winx up with the cameras, the Winx decide where they're going to look for talent, the cameras stay on them the entire time, and the Winx just randomly look around for talent with no real plan in mind. Mostly because their visions have them going toward a specific person, but the talent show doesn't know this, so it's just a lot of dead air. You could get away with saying, well, it's not being broadcast live. It's not like they're just filling up airtime with all of this non-action. But they have a live studio audience. These people are just always there watching the show in the studio. I guess they have nothing better to do than spend 24 hours a day just watching the Winx dink around and maybe finding a talented person, literally one talented person an episode. That's gotta be like the most boring recording session to sit in on. And I'm doubling down on what I said last time. There is no reason for the Winx to be involved with this show. They are brought to the world of dreams strictly because they are fairies and have magical potential and powers. They have the Dreamix visions, which show them the talented people who are being targeted. There is no reason to be on this show other than to just waste time and make their lives more difficult. One of the biggest examples of wasted potential this show has is Ace. He's the host of the WoW talent show, and he's pretty much the main obstacle in season 1 between the Winx and just getting to comfortably do their jobs protecting people. And you know who they got to voice Ace in this show? The voice of Lord Darkar from the 4Kids dub. How could they do this and not make him one of the main villains? He should have at least been Tinker Bell's like underling or something in an official way. But no, no, we don't get anything cool out of Ace at all. He's just a mild annoyance with a big ego. Also, he's the voice actor of Sonic from Sonic X, and now I can't stop thinking about Sonic the Hedgehog being mean to the Winx Club. I've already spoken about how I hate the fashion in this show, but that's really more of a product of its time, I feel. But that's no excuse for making the girls dress like this. All of their color palettes are relatively similar. We've got no real individuality in these outfits. They're just different outfits, but they're all styled for the exact same person. I refuse to believe that Aisha would wear this three-quarter sleeve sweatshirt with giant rhinestones sewn onto it. Just a brief aside, can we talk for a second about how awful the fashion was in this time period? Whoever thought that sewing giant plastic gems all over shirts was a great idea was brain damaged. Bloom is wearing way too much pink. Stella's outfit is almost passable, but I hate her arm warmers. Flora's outfit is okay. The most I can say about it is she doesn't look bad in it. I truly cannot stand the way that they've styled Musa in this. I miss her more tomboy, rough and tumble look. But even when they softened her up and made her a bit more feminine in appearance, she still had a very unique style in the earlier seasons. But this is just so off the mark where Musa's concerned. This doesn't look like Musa to me. But by far the person who suffered the worst in styling has got to be Tekna. Look at this. Look at what they've done to my girl. You can't see any of her personality here. Not one scrap of it. This skirt, hideous and impractical. This top, unnecessarily flashy. Tekna would never. And while we're talking about Tekna's styling, let's go ahead and discuss the war crime on top of her head. I hate this haircut on Tekna. I feel uniquely qualified to talk about this because I graduated magna cum laude from my hair school. Just gonna go ahead and throw that flex out there. So when I say that Tekna's hair is a dumpster fire, I mean it. If your hair is above shoulder length, you should not have that short of a taper in the front going to the back. It should not be that much longer in the back than it is in the front. This looks like a weird grown out mullet. I hate it. God, I hate it. At least they fixed up her hair a little bit in the fairy form, but this is the hairstyle we see her with most often, and I just cannot understand the disrespect that keeps getting lobbed at Tekna. I really can't. None of the hair in this show is what I would describe as great, but the worst hair in the show is definitely when they're in their spy outfits because it looks like part of their spy uniform is bumpets and hairspray. But also in season 2 when they're wearing their band outfits, their main hairstyle is just this shaggy 80s hairband look, and I'm just not a fan of it. I know some people can rock this and pull it off. I just personally hate this and I don't want to look at it anymore. None of the outfits or styling really lends itself to any of the girls' personalities. You can't get a sense of who they are at all from any of these outfits. It's just a mashup of what was popular and on the rack at the time. And even though in World of Winx we do see a bit more of the girls' individual personalities, I would say that it's not enough of their personalities. They all still seem kind of one note even though they seem like individuals. Aisha, for example, her character was always very, very interesting and appealing to me. Easily one of the coolest and strongest Winx Club members, and she just gets dealt such a bad hand in this show. Do you remember when her defining characteristics used to be a dancer who felt like dance was her lifeline? The ability to express herself and personal freedom was one of the most important things to her. and now she's just the sports one. She's strong, she's kind of aggressive. That's it. There's also some slander against Flora that I will not stand for. There's a bit of a running gag in World of Winx that Flora can't cook. Her herbal tea tastes bad, she's not good at making cupcakes. This is all Flora slander, and it is untrue. Flora was an expert potion maker in Winx Club. She definitely could make something good to eat. I refuse to accept this. I refuse to believe this. And then there's Bloom. Even though there's absolutely no reason for her to be the main character, she still gets the main character treatment. There's a small period of time in season 1 where she's kicked off of the WoW talent show, so she gets to have her own adventures. And it just frustrates me to no end that it just had to be Bloom that got kicked off of the talent show. It couldn't have been any of the other girls. Heaven forbid we get any interesting character moments with any of the other Winx Club. No, it's Bloom. It's always Bloom who gets all of the character development. Even when she's not around the other girls, they're busy hallucinating that she's there so they can all just be having so much of a better time, because it's impossible to enjoy anything without Bloom being involved. We really don't know anything about this version of Bloom, because, once again, this is an alternate universe, and they've told us nothing about her. We don't know when she discovered her powers, we don't know what planet she's from because they've only been on Earth for a few months. She doesn't have the dragon flame, she might not even be from Sparks. All we know is that they're from off of Earth somewhere. So she might be the fire fairy of Jupiter. And I don't want to hear anyone correcting me in the comments about that because there is nothing in this story to disprove anything I just said. One minorly annoying thing in WoW that has to do with Bloom is when she's in a police interrogation room. She keeps having asides to the camera where she's telling us information we already know. She's just breaking the fourth wall to let us know that she is the most important character and her thoughts cannot be ignored. Individually, the rest of the girls don't really get that much time to shine, especially Roxy, who is barely even here. And you know, Roxy's not my favorite Winx Club character. That title belongs to Stella. But I'm very fond of Roxy. I like season 4 well enough. I think Roxy would have been a great permanent addition to the team if they actually went in that direction. But the way this series just keeps her around to constantly shove her into the background and then ignore her is just so frustrating. I've said it before and I'm probably gonna say it a million times more. What I get frustrated by the most in shows is wasted potential. And you can't get much more wasted potential than the Nemesises, Nemesises, Nemesi, these hoes. I really like the idea of the Nemesi, these villains. The major problem that I have with them is the fact that they show up for one episode, create a problem that was never a problem before this episode, and continues to not be a problem after the episode ends. One of the biggest problems with them is they weren't present from the very start of season 1. In episode 2 of season 1, the Winx Club are fighting shadows and their own shadows disconnect from them and start attacking. And this is when the birth of the Nemesises, I'm just gonna say Nemesises, should have happened. They should have been here from the very start. They should have been attacking in teams of like 2 and 3s. They should have been impersonating the Winx Club because they're already based off of the girls' individual character models. They should have been working together to drive wedges between the group dynamic. But no, we get one episode conflicts with each of them where the girls are pretty much just fighting on their own. And the conflicts they present might be relevant to the individual characters, but it means nothing to the overall story. I do, however, like the design of the Nemesises. Well, most of them. My favorite is Muse's. The collar going around her mouth to signify that she is the opposite of Musa, who is trying to project her voice. I like this. I like this design idea. It's such a shame that we only see her in one episode. I think my least favorite one is Bloom's. Like, if somebody tried to retool the show to make it better, I'd say that this is the Nemesis that needs the biggest overhaul. In season 2, episode 1 of World of Winx, we get the reveal that this is not just the World of Dreams, it's also Neverland from Peter Pan fame. And this reveal is pretty stupid. I feel like it would have been less jarring to me if it would have been apparent from early on in season 1 that this is what was going on, but it's a like halfway point reveal and it just feels so strange to me because nothing's really added by this being Peter Pan lore. I mean, seriously, subtract the Peter Pan stuff out of this, make Matt just the heir to the World of Dreams throne or whatever, change Tinkerbell to just some generic fairy queen, and it's still the exact same story. Nothing really changes at all when you remove the Peter Pan aspect. So why was it here to begin with if you're not really going to do anything with it? Also, the spirit of Neverland or the World of Dreams or whatever mentions that the World of Dreams is the source of magic for all fairies. And that just raises way more questions. Fairies have presumably been around for a long time. We get literally no backstory about it, but let's just assume that fairies have been around for a long time. How do they not know where their magic comes from? Is the World of Dreams specifically tied to the dreams of humans, or do people from other planets count? Because remember, once again, the Winx have said that they are not from Earth. So, does the World of Dreams just have connections with every planet that has fairies, but they only siphon dreams off of the humans? Like, what's going on here? You can't just jumble up a bunch of nonsense and hand it to me. You have to tell me what's going on. And speaking of the World of Dreams being Neverland, let's talk about how lame their version of Captain Hook is. Originally, he introduces himself as Jimmy. He's first introduced to us as kind of this troublemaker, maybe villainous character that is interested in Bloom, but anyone who can spot character design elements from a mile away will notice the bags under his eyes and realize this is definitely going to be a twist villain. They try to make him have a little bit of will they, won't they tension with Bloom, but I'm just so annoyed by all of that, let's ignore it. Because it doesn't go anywhere anyway. But the reveal that he's Captain Hook actually made me pretty mad the first time it happened, and I got re-mad about it the second time. You can't just say that his name is James Hook. He's supposed to have a hook for a hand. He might use a hook to fight, but this is not Captain Hook. He looks way too young to be Captain Hook. The idea of doing a retelling of old stories is all fine and good and whatever, but when you change the characters so much that they're unrecognizable, you're basically just telling a new story anyway, so why not just make it an original story? And the reveal that he was, in fact, the main villain all along, even though Tinkerbell's been doing all the villainous heavy lifting so far, is just so drawn out and unnecessarily delayed. It, it was both upsetting and completely expected when he was like, no, I'm going to turn the tree into a ship and fly it into a nightmare void. By the way, the big important tree in Neverland just gets magically turned into a ship. I hate it here. I know I talked at length in the other video about how I just can't stand Matt but I just want to emphasize here how bad his and Tinkerbell's relationship sucks. The reason why Tinkerbell is evil is because she was in love with Peter Pan, who I think was a child the last time he was in Neverland. But Peter Pan decides to leave Neverland and go to the real world and grow up. There in the real world, he has a son and presumably dies of old age or is just gone forever or whatever. And instead of being horribly heartbroken that the man she loved decided to leave her and have a child with someone else, Tinkerbell makes the completely rational decision that if she can't have Peter, she might as well hook up with his son. And Matt decides to pick up his father's side piece because she can't be evil, you guys. She just can't be evil. You don't understand. He fell in love with her at first sight. She's hot. She can't be evil because she's too hot. But because they love each other so much, these two morons decide, yeah, okay, we can rule the world of dreams. And the world of dreams is so small and inconsequential. It's even more apparent watching the show for a second time. The world of dreams really just consists of one swamp, one shoreline, a cliff, a patch of woods, and a giant tree. Those are really the only locations we get out of the entirety of the world of dreams. If this really is Neverland or the world of dreams, it could have looked like anything. It could have been so visually amazing. They could have really just done whatever and it would have been fine because you could have used the justification, well, it's the world of dreams. It doesn't have to make sense. This show is basically just one minor frustration piled on top of another and another and another until the pile just becomes a million miles high. Like, one of the biggest frustrations I have with this is such a minor point. When they're like, we can't use magic in front of Earthlings. Who gave you that rule? And why don't you follow it if it's such a important rule? I would have preferred they do what they did in Lolly Rock, where it's implied that they can't show anybody their magic, but they still just use it constantly anyway, because really, how is anybody going to prove that you did magic? Why bother having a show about fairies if you're going to pretend like they shouldn't be using magic? That's the only reason we're tuning in. Do you think anybody gives a shit about them doing the dumb spy girl routine? No, they're terrible spies anyway. They just stand around in the middle of the street during the rain, thinking that covers them. The Winx Club was already great. They didn't need to try to be totally spies, because they're not good at being totally spies. So let's try this new rating system I'm trying to work out. The categories that I'm going to be judging this show by are how magical it is, how fun it was to watch, how much garbage I thought it contained, and how well the show was put together, otherwise known as the gold score. So World of Winx gets a magic score of 8, a fun score of 6, a garbage score of 7, and a gold score of 3. So the overall magical garbage rating of World of Winx is a 6 out of 10. Overall, the show just wasn't that fun for me to sit through. It was actually better the second time around, but it was still just so frustrating in certain parts. The show's plenty magical, but the storyline is just so haphazard and slapdash in certain places. And there's no reason for an animated show to feel like it was just thrown together in an afternoon. And the garbage rating is pretty high because even though it doesn't have any harmful ideas or anything being shown to a younger audience, it's a Winx Club show. that completely disregards the entire canon and lore of the Winx Club, and that's just unforgivable to me. So a big thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far. It really does mean a lot to me. And if you haven't subscribed, but you sat through the video this long anyway, thank you too, that means a lot as well. Up next on my channel, I'm gonna be getting back to the Lolly Rock recap videos. I'm also gonna be trying to bust that up and throw in a couple different videos here and there, so keep an eye out for that. If there's a magical girl piece of media that you think I should take a look at, or you've got a video idea for me, leave it down in the comments. I'm always checking them. Well, that pretty much does it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.